Hey there, my name's Niandra, and in this video I'm going to be giving some tips for playing around each ultimate as Mercy. Alright then, let's get started. Against Ashe, if a charging Bob knocks you into the air, you seemingly lose control of Waz's movement. However, you can still look around and use Guardian Angel to get away. Besides that, just try to burn Bob down with damage boost where you can. Against Bastion, I mean, he's more likely to target your less mobile allies, but regardless, when I hear his ultimate, I try to save Guardian Angel and react accordingly to where they land. If I notice he only fires one rocket, I'll generally try to avoid making GA's cooldown longer by slingshotting. This is so I can reposition quicker if the next one targets me. Against Cassidy, you know what to do. Corners and cover are your friends, especially during Valkyrie. The goal here is to just not let yourself get stuck out in the open, especially with GA on cooldown. There isn't a voice line for when Cassidy cancels his ult early or just lets it run out. However, there is a faint ticking sound for the duration of high noon, which can let you know that it's still going. Now, if that sound effect is being drowned out, it can be worth listening out for stuff like Cassidy firing his weapon or using his mag grenade, so you aren't just stuck in one spot unsure if you can move yet. Also, when desperate, take into consideration his shooting order. So basically, Cassidy fires high noon from his right to left, which is your left to right. If you're behind a shield, you generally want to stick to this side because it'll give you a higher chance of the shield taking the bullet for you. If you are not behind a shield, then I guess this side gives you like an extra frame to find cover. Against Echo, just try to burn the copy down with damage boost. A lot of Echo players struggle to get much value from their ult at the moment and often just use it as an extra life. If your team does fumble and cannot take her down in time, play around the ult of who she has cloned accordingly. Against Genji, you should constantly be asking yourself how long it's been since he last used Dragon Blade and if he's likely to have it now. When I suspect Genji is looking to ult, I keep an eye on him to make sure he's at arm's length, because the key to survival will be distance and playing around his dash ability. His dash gets reset upon activating Dragon Blade, meaning that positioning in the air won't guarantee your safety, and it also resets after eliminations. When Genji takes down an ally, I know he can reposition, and if it looks like he's going to target me, I want to time his dash with a Guardian Angel that ideally takes me away from him. Against Hanzo, you can always just beam people across Dragon Strike. You can also Guardian Angel through it and take roughly 130 damage, which isn't ideal, but sometimes it is better to just tank it for a better position rather than stay put while surrounded by enemies. With enough height and distance, you can slingshot over Dragon Strike, but it's pretty easy to misjudge with potentially disastrous results. Besides all that, when I suspect Hanzo has ult ready, I am a bit wary about hugging walls that he could be behind, because if he ults from the other side, I will have very little time to react. Occasionally in positions like this, I might step back further from where I think Dragon is coming from, so I have more time to adjust myself further. Against Junkrat, when I hear Riptire, I will usually disconnect my beam and hide around cover nearby. If I cannot afford to do this, I'll play as far back from other allies as the situation will allow me and try to damage boost so we can destroy Riptire quicker. If that's not an option and I'm absolutely desperate, I'll take the pistol out. When you are in Valkyrie, you might be able to figure out Junkrat's position from the directional audio and hunt him down. However, if you are in the air, be careful about hugging walls since Riptire can climb up them. A lot of Junkrat players will just instantly detonate the tire on you if they see you coming towards him. Also, when hiding on high ground, be careful about tunnel visioning on allies below, because Junkrat can absolutely sneak up on you here. Against Mei, you can Guardian Angel across her ult without being fully frozen if you really need to get to the other side. Blizzard takes roughly a couple of seconds to freeze you, meaning you can stand in it during the last second or so without getting stunned. Also, two things to keep in mind. One, Blizzard has some vertical range, which mostly catches me out on the Colosseo bridge, and two, Blizzard is LOS based but visualized through walls regardless, meaning you can stand in it behind a wall and not be affected, like here on the bridge. Against Pharah, just keep an eye on the sky and take note when she is seemingly missing from a fight. The sounds of her jump jets are very easily drowned out, meaning she can sneak up pretty easily. Try to prioritize hard cover since she'll burn through shields extremely fast and also has a decent amount of splash damage that might require you to take some steps back. Also, personally, sometimes I will damage boost allies like Cassidy through Pharah ult instead of healing, because Mercy generally can't heal through it, and if we eliminate her, well, the damage stops. Against Reapers, some of them make it really obvious when they're about to ult because they'll just wraith towards a clump of people, and that is your cue to get back if you aren't already there. When you suspect Reaper has ult and he's missing from a fight, keep an eye on potential flank routes. Death Blossom has some vertical range, so he might try to jump off the top rope to catch you by surprise. Also, due to some weird convoluted reason, Reaper's ult does more damage to barriers the more players you have standing behind them. This means you should try to use barriers as a shield while you fall back, rather than just stand behind it and pray it won't get broken. Against Sojourn, just stay behind cover, but also be aware if she can power slide into an angle on your position. Against Soldier, once again cover and positioning behind your team is key. You can throw the tracker off by hiding behind another ally, which I really only try to do with that tank as an absolute last resort. Against Sombra, there is a very brief delay between the voice line starting and the hack effect actually being applied. During that tiny window, you can activate Valkyrie or maybe step behind cover to break line of sight and dodge it, although that can be pretty hard. Keep an eye on Translocator being thrown into the middle of a fight, because that can be a great indication that EMP is coming. Besides that, just like normal hack, EMP will cancel GA mid-flight, but it will not affect your super jumps or slingshots too much. Against Symmetra, the main thing to keep in mind is that Mercy can heal through her wall while the other support is probably blocked by it. Because of this, I'll try to keep track of who they can hit and who they cannot in case that ally needs priority. I'm also not afraid to pop Valkyrie in response, providing things are generally looking good for my team anyway. Against Torbjorn, be careful of him flinging his ultimate behind you with the intention of making you back up into it. Even with Guardian Angel's longer cooldown, you can still keep yourself in the air above it, but try not to rely on this. Against Tracer, if I get stuck with Pulse Bomb, I'll stand still, cancel Guardian Angel, unplug my Ethernet cable, whatever it takes for me not to accidentally kill someone, unless moving will put me in view of someone like Kiriko that can nullify it, and even then I'll be super careful. I did also see a clip of a Mercy player who was stuck mid-GA, so they jumped at Tracer to take her with them, which was extremely funny, but probably a 1 in a million play. I generally play around Pulse Bomb the same way I play around Tracer herself, especially since she generates ult fairly fast. This means positioning far back so she is forced to use multiple blinks to get to me and using high ground to keep distance from her. After Tracer sticks an ally with a Pulse Bomb, she might be aware that you're thinking of rezzing them. How you react here depends on a case-by-case basis, but if I see Tracer use a lot of blinks, stick the bomb and then recall, I might go for the res immediately if I don't think she can quickly follow up. If I see her just blink away, I might play things slowly in case she's lingering nearby. Against Widow, I get really self-conscious about my movement, as if there's a family member standing behind me watching me use the computer and judging everything I do. I will try to stick behind cover and ask myself if she can grapple shot into an angle on me. Widow's ultimate lasts for 15 seconds, so sometimes I'll look up at the round timer clock and subtract 15 to know when it's over. Against D.Va, generally just being aware of what's around you that can be used for cover, positioning well behind it and your team should keep you safe from most bombs. Like with others, be careful about pointless slingshots or super jumps that place you close to a fight, since you may not be able to escape in time. Against Doomfist, when I hear him use ult, I generally try to keep Guardian Angel available while in a safe position and watch for where he's going to land. Occasionally he will try to land in front of Mercy, hoping she'll fly into it, or maybe he'll go for her directly. In that case, I'll then fly away, ideally to high ground or out of view so he can't follow up without putting himself in danger and using additional cooldowns. Meteor Strike does have vertical range, but the damage drops off the further away you are from the center. This means super jumping or just being in the air can either minimize the damage or avoid his ult entirely. However, do watch out for Doomfist trying to catch you out by landing on small elevated platforms like this or on slidey rooftops. Another risk is that if you aren't high enough to avoid it entirely, you may be slowed down with GA on a long cooldown. Now, caution is crucial here, but if you have Valkyrie ready, using it to reset the cooldown of Guardian Angel gives you so much breathing room in regards to Meteor Strike, as long as you don't use it too late. If Doomfist activates ult right next to you, he can land very fast, so I wouldn't recommend it there, but if he does so from far away, sometimes I will Valk to just guarantee my safety. Against Junker Queen, when you suspect she has ult, play corners so you aren't lining up with allies, and consider taking a step back when you hear the voice line because the hitbox is huge. Make sure you damage boost anti-naded teammates since healing doesn't do anything. If you're especially worried, consider blue beaming the ally that needs healing the most so you can react fast when the effect wears off. Also be aware that a lot of Junker Queens will save their shout for after they ult so they can continue being aggressive, so play slow with reses and keep your distance. Against Orisa, you can generally tell when she's going to ult because she'll spin towards a group of people, possibly well fortified, especially if your team has an Ana that might try to sleep her. When Orisa activates Terror Surge, she sucks people towards her, and that suck seems to cancel Guardian Angel. This means I generally want to get away from her before she's close enough to me, or less ideally, wait for the suck to happen then fly away. Mercy cannot GA to allies within 5 meters of her, so if you fumble here, you might be in trouble. Against Ramattra, I do quite like using Valkyrie against him, providing my squishy teammates have some distance on him. The double beam length means you can play out of range while assessing the situation. Maybe you heal to nullify the constant tick damage, maybe you damage boost to focus him down, especially if he's too deep with no support. I'll also keep a close eye on and prioritize my less mobile teammates because they'll be the ones that generally get stuck in it. Against Reinhardt, you have the start of the voice line, then a brief delay before the hammer actually hits the ground. If you Guardian Angel and immediately crouch upon hearing Reinhardt use Earth Shatter, you can jump over it. The chance of success increases the further away you are since you have more time to react, but it's really not that hard to get consistent with this. Treat it like a backup plan though, because ideally you should be playing around corners so you don't get hit by Earth Shatter in the first place. Against Roadhog, holding jump to trigger Angelic Descent and moving backwards will make his ult push you back further than normal and do less damage. Also, Hog can hook during his ultimate, so I continue to act like there's a 20-meter bubble surrounding him that I generally need to stay clear of. Against Sigma, I mostly try to keep distance from teammates, my other support especially when I suspect he has ult, to minimize the amount of people he can pick up. Try to be aware if it looks like he's holding onto it for overtime to lift people off the objective, since you may need to dive into touch. Keep in mind, Graphitic Flux does 50 damage when it lifts someone up, and then does 50% of their maximum HP on the slam back down. So if allies are healthy and not under a huge amount of pressure, Valkyrie can be pretty good at keeping them up through it. However, this also means that occasionally I will prioritize those that are somewhat healthy over those that are really low if I don't think I can save them. If I do get picked up by Sigma's ultimate, I'll try to heal an injured squishy to trigger sympathetic recovery, and maybe try to shift myself in a way where I land in a good position. Against Winston, like with Roadhog, jumping and activating Angelic Descent will knock you back further in regards to both his punches and the jumps that he lands on you. Although I will try to keep my movement unpredictable, usually by cancelling GA early to avoid that damage in the first place. Keep in mind, the cooldown for Winston's jump during Primal Rage is 2 seconds, while using Tech can make Guardian Angel up to 3. This means using Valkyrie to reset the cooldown of GA and keep out of range can be great, if you aren't already too low. Winston might be looking to boop someone into his team or a bad position, so watch out for that and peel when necessary. Against Wrecking Ball, be careful about lingering near his mines because he may try to boop you into them. That being said, if an ally died to mines, there is enough time to destroy one of them during the resurrect animation, so you can help by clearing a bit of space. Also, sometimes the mines will get stuck in really weird spots that you can back up into during Valkyrie, so be careful about that. Against Zarya, if you do find yourself caught in Grav, you can look towards an ally outside of it and hold down your Guardian Angel button to automatically fly once no longer locked in place. All that being said, it is crucial to keep distance from your teammates when you suspect Zarya has ult, and sometimes you can tell when she has it because she'll play more aggressively. Against Ana, before she's even had time to build Nano, I'll check the scoreboard and ask myself, okay, who is she likely to target here, because I don't want it to be a surprise. If the enemy team has Genji, I'll take note if they seem to be holding onto their ult so they can combine it with Nano Boost. For the most part, I'll keep my distance from nanoed enemies and try to burn them down with damage boost when possible, or peel for allies the best I can. Against Baptiste, I know it's stating the obvious, but please avoid peeking his window as much as you can. I am especially cautious of Guardian Angel paths that take me across it. Even a Bap selfishly using window for himself shouldn't be underestimated. Generally, I either try to stay behind cover, support my allies that have taken side angles and cannot be hit as easily, or follow teammates that have pushed past window like this so it cannot be used. Against Brig, keep in mind her shield bash will stun during her ultimate. If I am going to res, I want to make sure I'm fully behind cover because even a tiny bit of arm poking out can get me bashed. At the time of this recording, Brigitte activating ult doesn't reset the cooldown of shield bash, so if I see her use it and then rally, I know she can't immediately stun. Against Illari, it's really hard to give tips because there's so many variables and little parts to her ultimate. We've got her searching for a target, the initial projectile, the damage needed to trigger Sunstruct, and the Sunstruct explosion damage. The main thing I keep coming back to though is just distance from teammates, especially since the projectile is pretty big and doesn't need to directly hit you. Another thing to keep in mind is that currently 90 damage is needed to trigger Sunstruct, however if an ally is lower than that and eliminated before the threshold is reached, the explosion will happen anyway, so again, distance is key. Against Kiriko, all you can really do is just stay away from the big rectangle on the floor. I'll generally look to play with allies that have taken high ground and or range to keep my distance from a possible rush. Against Lifeweaver, you can see when an enemy tree lets out a healing pulse. If my ally is in a 1v1 and I see that pulse, I might ask myself, okay, if I fully commit to damage boost here, can we win this duel before the next pulse is unleashed? Unfortunately though, if your teammates are a bit wonky at landing shots, damage boost can kind of feel like it's not really doing anything when tree is up. Besides that, be careful about his ultimate getting in the way of your line of sight. When Lifeweaver first came out, I had a couple of Valkyries where I didn't immediately notice my beam break when there was a tree between me and my beam target. Don't go out of your way to use his tree for cover since enemies will usually be nearby, but don't completely rule it out either, especially during a sneaky Valkyrie res. Against Lucio, his allies will usually be speed boosted during sound barrier, so I make sure to simply stick behind my team and just pray that things will be okay. Like with Kiriko, I make sure to keep track of potential fly paths behind me and on high ground so they can't catch up to me as easily, especially if the enemy team has Reinhardt. Against Mercy, if you find yourself also in Valkyrie, try to be the one that pushes damage boost the most since her healing isn't great against huge amounts of damage. At the very least, try to flick between the two B modes and get some small ticks in where you can. Now, some Mercy players can get kinda bloodthirsty towards their counterpart during Valkyrie, and the most satisfying thing ever is just being unbothered by it. By staying alive, you're wasting their ult and value they could be getting from elsewhere, and that's great. Unless the rest of my team is dead, in which case I am okay if Mercy kills me because she won't get ult charge for it. Also, Mercy sees enemy health bars during Valkyrie, right? I had a game the other day where I was super low health and trying to avoid being spotted by enemy Mercy so she wouldn't attack me, because I've had other games where I can tell she is looking at my health bar trying to decide if it's worth going for. Personally, I do prefer to just damage boost as much as I can, but if I see we get a pick in the kill feed, I will keep an eye on enemy Mercy if I think she's going to go for a res, in case I can interrupt it. Against Moira, Coalescence pierces shields and teammates, so squishy allies should generally get higher priority and attention. On its own, Coalescence takes roughly 3 seconds to eliminate a 200 HP target, so in isolated 1v1s I will sometimes damage boost my allies through Moira's ult if I trust them. Even if we don't eliminate her, we might be able to force Moira to fade back to her team. Now, all that being said, there is a good chance Moira will just target Mercy specifically, so try to play out of range and behind corners. Honestly, as long as you aren't doing super long GAs into super jumps right in front of Moira, you should be golden. I am also a bit hesitant to play in small cramped rooms, mostly in case she throws a damage orb at me first. Against Zenyatta, this is another one where you don't have a whole lot to do. There are a couple of instances where damage boosting extremely bursty allies like your ulting Pharah can potentially break through it, but for the most part, keep calm and evaluate the situation. The most important thing is to just keep your team up and stabilize so they're still standing once Transcendence is over. It is possible to see the range of an enemy Transcendence via this ring on the floor. Look out for enemies potentially outside of it, point them out to your team, and look to damage boost allies going after them. Besides that, if your team also has Ana, it can be worth keeping her topped up so she can use anti-nade aggressively to counter trans instead of having to use it to heal herself. And that is all from me for this video. Thank you so much for watching and have a nice day.